Hey everyone, Roman Prokopchuk here. Be sure to subscribe, follow, hit that notification bell, follow the podcast, all that good stuff. I appreciate the support and encouragement in terms of creating this content. So really this push in the south, this counteroffensive to retake Kherson and push and take and liberate Crimea started off Monday. Technically, it's day 3 of kind of heavy operations. Today, 3 bridges were destroyed in the Kherson region. Several cities bordering around Kherson have been hit by plane attacks in terms of missile strikes. Obviously, HIMAR activity, and the interesting thing now is there's more operations going on at night. I believe the number in terms of Tuesday night into Wednesday, so early Wednesday, early hours of the morning, the count was like 150, 160 or so estimated Russian soldiers killed overnight in strikes. So obviously right now it's hitting Russian positions where they're amassing to generate and give as much damage. Obviously there's no concrete where the line currently is. I think the line has still as it says been broken. At one point I believe Ukraine pushed a good 10 to 20 kilometers, but obviously they met resistance because they're not just walking in the park, and an offensive push, there's more resistance and obviously more casualties than if you're hunkered down, dug in, and defending. So at one point they pushed, further in, but they were pushed back, but they've broken in several parts in terms of that initial line of defense. Other than that, obviously for operational security, people aren't posting on social media, soldiers, things in terms of boasting of any success or mentioning obviously any failures. The videos, like I mentioned yesterday and the day before, that are coming in, they're coming in from Russians really recording content within the field, within that southern theater around Kherson and in the Kherson Oblast, some of which look like they're abandoning and leaving their existing post to obviously potentially a tactical retreat to another position to defend. But obviously that's speculative. But from what I've seen, for the most part, the press have honored that operational security in terms of how much operation intel is really shared. The embedded press hasn't really been coming out with that much footage or information about where they are, the troop movements, the troop capacity. But in terms of a match in the south, Ukraine, in terms of forces, outnumber the number of Russian forces within that southern theater. That's a little different, obviously, in the east, because Russia's throwing everything in that east and pushing that line slowly and slowly to, obviously, their goal is to take the whole of the Donbass. But in the south, that's not necessarily the case. So Ukrainian troops outnumber Russian troops in the south. In terms of artillery and other munitions, tanks, and everything else, it's really even, and in most cases favor Ukraine. Now, this counteroffensive isn't one of those things. Let's design this and do this overnight out of the blue. It's been planning and war gamed out with the U.S. and other partners strategically for a few months. Obviously, a war game and a scenario of that sort is only a scenario because real time anything can happen, and a lot of things can go wrong real time in a military campaign. But for the most part, this was a strategic move. Ukraine wanted to conduct a counteroffensive on several fronts, but U.S. and other countries, and I think they realized they didn't want to overextend and throw everything in multiple theaters. So they focused on the South, where like I said, the troops were in favor, and the already set up equipment, the tanks, other vehicles, the ease of doing bombing runs and things of that nature in terms of logistics. They hit things in Crimea, so Crimea wouldn't be able to reinforce Kherson, and took out the bridges, took out the ammo dumps in the last few weeks. So the move is calculated. Obviously there's reports of Russia did this, Russia did that. Obviously, there's losses on both sides. Unfortunately, that's war. So hopefully there'll be more concrete numbers coming in the next few hours, the next few days. But overall, I believe a large portion of the KIA that's going on within, obviously Ukraine is coming from that southern theater. So, but in terms of kind of casualties and losses in general, in the country, the numbers obviously increased. It looks like an estimate of 350 for the 31st of August. 2 UAVs, 20 tanks, 12 pieces of artillery, 3 MLRs, 18 armored personnel vehicles, 19 other vehicles, and 1 anti-aircraft war system. So that brings the total for the day of 75 pieces of equipment, and an estimate of about 350 personnel, which obviously that number, I mean, Russia just throws troops into the meat grinder, but that's not necessarily a sustainable number. Obviously, Russia right now is trying to push in terms of driving and replenishing the numbers of troops in Ukraine, because a large number of troops are either dead in terms of, killed in action, or wounded. So that manpower has to be replenished. But I believe if this pace continues in terms of munitions, Russia is going to be severely low by the end of the year if they maintain this pace. Now, if they even increase the pace of shelling and doing missile strikes, they're going to be out of the inventory of what they have in terms of ammunition supplies by the end of the year. If Ukraine somehow manages to take out more, munition dumps, hit the ammunition while it's in transit, identify specific, storage facilities for different guided missiles, if possible. Obviously, if they're not shot from, the Black Sea in terms of ships, or further out, or shot from planes, then Russia is going to have a big problem. I believe the latest statistics in terms of an estimate, Russia has exasperated 7 million rounds in terms of heavy shells and missiles for the duration of this war, which is a astonishing amount if you multiply that by the price per missile, price per shell. Obviously, more of the guided munitions are more expensive, but that number is pretty crazy. So that's another thing not working in Russia's favor. You're in a foreign land. Morale is getting to be low, even though obviously you're throwing more and more troops into the meat grinder. Ammo is scarce in areas in terms of supply lines repeatedly getting hit. Now the fear of getting hit at night, HIMARS are working at night. There's missions in terms of the Air Force going on at night as well. Special forces activities and partisan activities behind, the conflict line, behind enemy lines. So you have all this going on, something that was promised to to be, 3 or 4 days to take the whole country, that Ukrainians were going to be in the streets throwing flowers in terms of welcoming their liberators, has dragged on for 6 months. And, who knows how much more Russia is able to throw at this. But, Russia throwing all this manpower into Ukraine, Russia needs to be considering bigger things. Russia and China are pretty much frenemies. They basically tolerate each other, but Russia shares a pretty big border with China, and there have been conflicts over that border in time. With China's standing army, if Russia keeps shifting more men and exasperating resources, they're going to be vulnerable. And I mean, they're already dependent on China for a lot of stuff. So it's going to be interesting next few weeks, next few months, what's going to transpire. But hopefully, with God's help, God willing, Ukraine can kick the invaders permanently out of Crimea, out of the Donbass established pre-2014 border lines. And, hopefully that's that. I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds, but that's the ideal scenario. I appreciate everyone listening, for the support, for the comments, and I'll continue to deliver content from a first generation immigrant's perspective and what I'm hearing from my family members, 3 of which in the armed forces of Ukraine, from family all over the country, different things coming in. So I appreciate all of the support. Slava Bohu, Slava Ukraini, Slava Nazi, God bless.